Good morning, everybody. My name is Vanessa Venturini. I'm coming to you remotely from the University of Rhode Island, and I'm excited to share with you the way that we've been able to really shine a spotlight on impact and keep our entire program focused on mission. And today I'm going to go through our three different phases of developing our strategic focus area, implementing it, and then evaluating it to see if we've reached our goals. And so first of all, our development stage, what is a focus area? So basically we created a set of related behavior change goals that are all related to a certain impact area that we wanted to focus in on for the entire Master Gardener program for multiple years. And so this is the first time that we've ever done this, and the reason that we wanted to do this, it's an opportunity to focus our volunteer public education efforts and all of our resources in a strategic way towards an issue that was important to our local communities and might also be a good model nationally for you all. Many of you may know that we recently went through an entire, re-engineering of our Master Gardener program, where we kind of brought our former Master Gardener Association, which was volunteer run, under the fold of the university. So this was also a way of giving everybody a rallying force to kind of come together and stay focused on what's important. And so again, with common goals, we're able to stay focused on impact with all of our volunteer activities. And so our process looks kind of like this. In step 1, we're going to train our volunteers. Step 2, we're going to educate the public. And step 3, we're going to measure that knowledge gain and behavior change. And so more specifically, just like the entire Train the Trainer program, step 1, we're going to create continuing education classes that are really focused around a similar impact area, and that we know that all of the volunteers who were involved in the program over those years have some baseline knowledge of this. And so we also took advantage at our leadership meetings and anytime we came together to emphasize our focus area and get everybody excited to then go out into the public and teach people about these different behavior change goals. And then at the end of the year, we do a year-end client survey, and we're able to see, are people changing their knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors as it relates to our goals. And so more specifically, our development process was that we went around and we consulted with external partners to the university, as well as faculty, and then we discussed, the results of those with our advisory council, which consists of, 6 volunteers, leaders, as well as faculty and staff. And here's the questions that we asked ourselves when we were kind of deciding what our focus area would be. Where can we have the biggest impact in Little Rhode Island? How can the Master Gardener program be value added to other efforts that are going on locally? What will our volunteers be interested in and be really passionate about and be able to get behind? And also, since the URI Cooperative Extension recently went through a strategic plan, how can we fit into those broader goals? And so here are just a smattering of some of the partners that we consulted with. Director of Food Strategy, our pollinator working group, and some faculty members to try and decide on the focus area. And the group that was really influential in helping us make this decision was a newly formed pollinator working group. So you may know that at a national level, they've asked each state to come up with kind of a pollinator plan, and this was a coalition of different environmental organizations locally that was appointed by our Rhode Island General Assembly to develop that plan, and it was led by the Audubon Society of Rhode Island. And a lot of the recommendations that they had come up with thus far were things that we could teach as Extension Master Gardener volunteers. Things like, how to enhance urban habitat for pollinators, how to increase fall flowering habitat, that type of thing. So we knew that we could have a big influence here on a really important local initiative. We also used some of our wonderful resources that we've pulled together at the national level here with our Extension Master Gardener coordinators. So giving a little plug here, if you haven't checked out the resource repository for all of the Extension Master Gardener coordinators, definitely check that out. That was where we got actually our behavior change goals that we're using. It was a Washington State evaluation that was developed for use with Master Gardener volunteers after they complete their internship to see how they've changed their behavior. So we were able to adapt some of those goals and then fit it within a larger goal that Cooperative Extension Strategic Plan had, which is land stewardship. In addition to kind of all of those factors, we also were able to decide on our focus area with the fact that land use is going to agriculture, suburbia, 30 million acres of that are lawn, and only 5% is now left over for conservation land. So we're able to kind of look at this big picture, realize, zoom in on Rhode Island. We're the second most densely populated state in the Union, so even though we're small, we have a lot of people here, 1 million people, 700 active Master Gardeners, by the way. And we're one of very few states, maybe only 4, that lack invasive species regulation. So there are no banned plants here. And we know that, invasive species are introduced through the horticulture vector, and that native plants, when added to the garden, can help create a more balanced ecosystem. We know about the monarch and the pollinator story. We know how important these beneficial organisms are to agriculture, and that, while very few insects are actually pests, most, less than 1% out there, there are actually a lot of people overusing harmful pesticides and other inputs in their gardens and lawns. And so this was an area, again, with the monarchs and stormwater pollution, this was an area that we were able, through our Master Gardener public education, to have an effect on. And so this is how we chose our focus area of land stewardship. And again, it's going to be, so far, we think, a 3-year focus area. So it kind of started last year, we're in the middle of it, and we'll wrap it up next year and kind of move on to a different focus area. And here were the 4 broad behavior change goals that we have related to land stewardship. So first of all, we hope that people, after this initiative is over, the general public will recognize Cooperative Extension as a good, quality science-based resource to come to for all of their questions. We also, our second goal is that we want to preserve biodiversity and pollinators by encouraging natives, discouraging invasives, and helping people conserve pollinator habitat. Conserving water and soil resources and reducing pesticide use is our 4th goal. And so again, what do we mean by recognizing Cooperative Extension as a science-based resource? We want people to come to our gardening hotline, make use of our workshops, soil testing, all of our various educational sources. Again, here's what we mean by biodiversity and pollinators. Here are the behaviors that we want to promote. Again, with our soil and water goal, we want to encourage people to use efficient irrigation methods, to use plants to reduce stormwater runoff, and mulch to reduce the need for watering. And specific goals related to soil conservation, we want people to test the soil, amend the soil properly based on the results of those tests, and of course compost to add that good organic matter to their soil. Sorry, the formatting's a little funky here. And of course our final, I think one of our most important goals here is encouraging people to reduce the use of pesticides in residential garden and community gardens. And our way of doing that is really through integrated pest management, encouraging people to plant the right plant for the right place, identifying those diseases and pests before taking action, and using alternatives to pesticides whenever possible. Okay, so how did we implement this? Really quickly, here are some of the continuing education classes that we also recorded, so now people are able to watch them If they weren't able to attend the classes and lectures in real time, they're able to watch them later. And so one of my favorite recordings or classes that came out of this was we brought in a visiting scholar from the University of Toronto, Scott McIver, who's doing some amazing things with enhancing wild bees in cities. So again, that pollinator idea, we had a whole series on plant identification and diagnostic skill building so that we could help the general public adopt some of those integrated pest management and train our hotliners. We have had some wonderful classes on composting and soil testing, and then we've also had these field sessions where we've brought people to see native plants and some of these pollinator habitats, as well as on the right is our Earth Care Farm compost field session where we're able to see some of these practices in action, and we've been doing this over the past few years. With our educational services, so of course we're always trying to encourage people to use our gardening and environmental hotline, so we put a big emphasis on publicizing the availability of this through various means. We also have the developed themed Ask a Master Gardener, we call them kiosks. I think they call them plant clinics in other states, but these educational booths where we can be out in the community teaching people about these specific behavior change goals. And so here's some of the materials we've developed around ways to help pollinators, trying to keep it really simple and manageable. We participated in National Pollinator Week at the State House, where they actually lit up our State House to look like a bee with yellow and black lights. There was a whole bee rally, and we were there presenting our educational booth. Here we are, we have a local TV spot where we're able to kind of share some of these behavior change goals as well. We have a large event that's attended by a couple thousand people each year, our big spring plant sale. And we also had, our invasive plant booth where people brought in plants and asked for identification. We do soil testing all throughout the state, and so we really put a big emphasis on this, where we can test pH, but also tell people about getting the full soil analysis so that they can know exactly what to add to their soil. You may have heard a little bit about our School Garden Mentor program. I'd be happy to share this with anyone. But we've also been able to be in about 70 different schools throughout the state, educating students out in school garden settings, helping these living laboratories kind of be used as outdoor classrooms. And again, we're creating that next generation of environmental stewards. Back to our spring plant sale, another one of our initiatives that came out of our land stewardship focus area was that we developed this concept of a Master Gardener Program Plant of the Year. So here's cardinal flower, Lobelia cardinalis, which is a native plant to Rhode Island. It attracts hummingbirds. It's very gorgeous, and so we were able to do some publicity and education about it before the sale. And I think even more exciting, we were able to put together these native plant systems. When we marketed it to the public, we called them plant in a boxes, or garden in a box, that is. And so these were a collection of 10 plants that you'd get, of a native plant system for full sun that was drought tolerant and attracts pollinators and monarchs, with the addition of some milkweeds. It was goldenrod, little blue stem, purple New England aster. And so all of these plants were available for a set price, and we sold out of those within the first hour, both the plant of the year and the native plant system. So all of our publicity tools, social media, have been really, really effective leading up to this, and basically turning our big fundraiser of the year into an educational experience and helping people practice what we preach. Another way that we do that is through our demonstration gardens, which are located all throughout the state. We have about 40 of them, and we've been able to kind of put that land stewardship spin on what we're teaching in our demonstration gardens. So here we are teaching soil conservation at one of our large public gardens in our capital city of Providence, Rhode Island. This is the Roger Williams Park Botanical Center, where we're able to test people's soil. We implemented a rain garden demonstration project in Newport, Rhode Island, where we worked with some local high schoolers and have held a number of classes with residents to teach them about how rain gardens can help, with the stormwater situation. They're also dealing with sea level rise in that coastal town. So it's just a really hot topic that's been very popular. Teaching people to reduce pesticide use in the vegetable garden through the use of things like row covers. Here we are in a community garden in Providence teaching that concept. It's been very easy to think about in all of our demonstrations gardens how we can teach about pollinator conservation habitat. Here we are showing those mason bee houses and the solitary bee houses and the different planting techniques that you can use to encourage pollinator conservation. Our project of the year was actually these really cool dinghy, last year was these really cool dinghy planters that are full of plants that encourage monarch butterflies. And you can see in the top right, we actually had visitors on our coastal stopover site here. And so this is a really highly visited tourist city, and we're able to teach people from all over the world and the U.S. about things that they can do in their own garden and yard to help monarchs and pollinators. And this particular project was also featured in the Monarch joint venture as a success story, which is another national outlet. We added a few new projects that kind of fell under our land stewardship focus area. This is a habitat restoration project where we're removing invasive species and adding natives and teaching people how you can do land stewardship on a volunteer basis. So we're really using this as a model project for other conservation organizations that might want to do similar habitat restoration. We've also added this really awesome all-native plant garden to one of our U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service visitor centers. So this is the Kettle Pond Native Plant Garden, and they've done a lot of really innovative things to, reach a broad audience with their message. We also have this semi-annual event where we encourage the public to come to our different demonstration gardens, our Project Open House, which just happened earlier this June, and we had this awesome map and all of the projects that were involved encouraged people to adopt land stewardship behavior change goals. And we even had this really cool visitor's guide where we had different symbols depending on what you would learn at each garden. So if you saw a bee, you knew you could learn how to attract pollinators or conserve water or reduce pesticide use. Okay, so finally, in the last few seconds that I have left over, talking a little bit about the ways that we've evaluated and seen if we've been successful. Of course, our goal is to teach people so that they go away and do something differently, and that is true behavior change. So how do we know if we're reaching these goals? We every year collect email addresses from the folks who come to one of our garden kiosks or our large events, who are involved in our school gardens or demonstration projects, and then we send them a year-end survey and we ask them, what do you do differently as a result of your interaction with Master Gardeners? So we know that in 2016, our top 3 behavior changes were getting people to grow food plants correctly, amending soil properly, and identifying plant problems before taking action against them. Last year, we were able to collect almost 2,500 emails, which is, more than double what we collected the year before. From those emails, we were able to receive 431 survey responses, which is a pretty good response rate. We know that of those people, 89% learned something new. So, hey, one goal achieved. And then in relation to our behavior change goals, we know that 47% of those surveyed began or increased their use of research-based gardening resources because of their interaction with master gardeners. So they're going and they're getting the good sources of information. So that's a win in my book. As it relates to biodiversity, people are avoiding invasive species, they're improving habitat and choosing native plants. We learned that we have a little bit of room for improvement in terms of our water conservation goals, but that's what's wonderful about evaluation, how many people are adopting these different practices. We did a little bit better when it comes to encouraging people to test, amend their soil, and compost their yard waste. Our most improved this past year is the goal of reducing pesticide use. So 44% of people actually began to identify plant problems before taking action, which we all know is a very important part of integrated pest management. So I'm very pleased about this. We're also able to get these in-depth client testimonials where people say, they gave me the courage to continue working towards a more conscientious, environmentally responsible approach to gardening. Or this other client said, I had a beautiful perennial garden, but it contained many non-native plants. I've tried to replace as many plants as possible to natives to enhance my pollinator population. Here's a really great quote from a client involved with the school garden talking about how a master gardener came in and taught the kids about composting. And so I will just leave you all with the idea that one of our future focus areas will be in the area of food systems and helping people to grow their own food. And so we know that we can start slowly integrating continuing education around this topic as we move towards our implementation phase in 2020. So I'd be more than happy to share more information with anyone. Please reach out. Vanessa at URI.edu is my email. And thank you all so much for listening.